Barry and his siblings Kim and Michelle had been called home for their mother's funeral. They had all grown up with her and were sad to see her go. However, it was also a time of joy, as they were to divide up the inheritance she had left them. The funeral went as expected, and the siblings said their final goodbyes to their mother. Suddenly, to everyone's amazement, their mother's eyes slowly opened. Despite having to miss their mother from now on, the siblings weren't just mourning. They were very well aware of the importance of their inheritance. Their mother would leave behind a lot of money, enough to completely alter their future. But the moment her eyes opened, all of the issues seemed to disappear. Something more important was going on, and it left them all in complete shock. Kim and Michelle had seen many things, but none like this. And Barry, well, Barry had his own say about the matter. None of them knew how to act after seeing their mother like that. What just happened to them, and where on earth to go from there? Barry knew, and his sisters didn't like it. But what could have caused their mother to open her eyes? Was it truly a miracle, or was one of the siblings responsible? The answer will surprise you. But before we start, smash the like button and make sure to subscribe if you haven't, and hit that notification bell so that you won't miss any new stories. Even though their mother passed away peacefully, her death caused a lot of family drama. Barry, Kim, and Michelle had been living separately for years and had barely any contact. But now that their mother had passed away, they had to come together. They were to meet at the funeral and were in for a shocking ride. Barry decided to organize their meeting. He started a day before the funeral with gathering all the paperwork. Barry knew his mother would leave behind something, as she came from a rather rich family. He started searching the house to gain more insight in her financial situation. Barry can't find anything. His first reaction is to suspect something's wrong. His mother was a very organized woman and knew for a long time that her life would come to an end. Barry looks around. Now that he realizes something might be wrong, he sees how messy his mother's house actually is. Barry was relieved to realize that his mother didn't leave him empty-handed, but he felt very alarmed at the same time. Who had been there before him? What was their intention? And what did they do with the papers and possible belongings? After all, the funeral was only one day away. Now that their mother was gone, her belongings were easy to take. Barry realized they still had keys, so it wouldn't be hard to have come there before him. He's on to something. So Barry decides to take pictures of everything, especially of the open drawers and other signs of a visit. After that, he makes a selection of all the pictures and decides to share them with his sisters by sharing it in their family chat. This is fully only minutes after Barry shared the pictures. His sisters, Kim and Shell, left the group. He calls them, but they don't pick up. The stress got to Barry. He felt weaker and dizzy. He tried sitting down, but it wouldn't get away from him. He felt as if he was poisoned or something like that. Barely conscious, he tries to go back to what he'd eaten and drank. Then, he realized something. Barry drank some tea on his way in. Although he made it himself, the bag was already in. Was he poisoned by some innocent tea? He decided to at least call someone and started to look for his phone. He can't find it. Barry could barely see straight and felt as if he was entering a fever dream. Then, he hears a phone ringing. It's right next to him and he tries with all the power he has left to grab the phone. A soft and soothing voice talks to him. He doesn't recognize the voice. He can't find the power to speak, so he just listens. The soft voice tells him who's responsible for the stolen papers and missing possessions of his mother. She even tells him where to find them and how to confront the thieves, who are dangerous. Barry tries to write down a few words and names, but feels how he's gliding off. He falls asleep. An hour later, he wakes up feeling dehydrated. After drinking about a gallon of water, he feels well again. He starts looking for the notes. This way, he can determine whether it is real. Then he finds the notes. It wasn't all a dream. Barry was sure to lock up his mother's house before leaving. Once he's on the driveway, he looks once more at the house and hears at the same time a car pull up. Barry looks in the direction of the car and is surprised to see the car entering the driveway, stopping only inches away from his feet. It was his oldest sister, Kim. He knew he was in for something. That was quick, he says, to provoke his sister. When she is close enough, she brings her hand to his face and says, "When was the last time you took your medicines, dear brother?" Hours later, Barry woke up somewhere else, without a memory of how he got there. Kim was carefully stroking his hair while he was lying on a couch in a poorly lit room. Yet, he didn't feel the urge to ask where he was. In some way, it resonated with him. He looked at his sister, he had to rest, and was finally alone after his sister dropped him off. As Kim sat inside her car, parked close to Barry's house, she was fighting her urge to sleep. The lights in Barry's house were still on, and once very few minutes, she saw Barry passing by the window. He looked disturbed, sleepless, and above all, he seemed to be plotting something. What was going on in his mind? All of a sudden, Kim wakes up. She's frustrated with herself for having fallen asleep, but soon realizes there is no time for that. And for the entire night, Kim looks for her brother. But despite her effort, lasting the entire night, she doesn't find Barry. Pale and exhausted, she arrives home in the morning. The funeral was only hours away, and she still had to prepare the paperwork. She accepted that Barry was gone for now, but little did she know, he'd appear very soon. The funeral service takes place. No sign of Barry yet. Most people were aware of his condition, so they couldn't be too surprised. Everyone says their goodbye, and finally, it's just Kim and Michelle next to the coffin. Then, the door opens. A nurse walks in. She's dressed in hospital clothes and comes in looking worried. She doesn't introduce herself, nor does she greet them. She says it's about Barry. Michelle and Kim are unpleasantly surprised. The nurse clearly wants to talk to them, but Michelle and Kim are in an intimate moment, standing next to the coffin. You're a speech at Tabanachine. They have to make a choice. Do they speak to the nurse, or do they finish their last moments with their mother? Kim leads the way. She makes a wordless gesture to Michelle, telling her that she'll be right back after speaking to the nurse. They walk off and sit down in a private room, just the two of them. No Michelle in the room. The nurse tells Kim that they ran into Barry, who was walking around the neighborhood disordered. So they took him in, and he was physically feeling well at the moment. Kim is relieved to hear about her brother's whereabouts, but feels sad to hear about her brother this way. Then, the nurse has a strange request because she asks Kim to postpone the funeral. Kim is surprised. The nurse then proceeds to tell Kim about her hopes for Barry. She expects him to recover, but wants him to be able to say goodbye to his mother. She tells Kim how beneficial this would be for Barry. Kim has to make a decision. Kim understands and thanks the nurse for her bravery. And she tells the nurse she's willing to think it over, but that she has to ask Michelle about her opinion first. Gideon, after all, postponing the funeral would hurt her just as much. Then, the nurse suddenly jumps up. The nurse can't control herself. No, not Michelle, please, she begs. She asks Kim if she's crazy after what happened between Michelle and Barry. Kim doesn't know what she's hearing and asks the nurse what she's talking about. Well, Kim was in for a ride. The nurse starts telling Kim about their history. It started all back when their beloved mother started having health issues. Michelle started demanding most of her time while leaving Barry out of it. Barry loved his mother so dearly that Michelle's behavior terribly hurt him. That was when things started to get worse with Barry. The nurse was just getting started. Michelle kept demanding their mother's time more and more, even though their mother wasn't allowed too many visits. Barry couldn't visit her anymore. That's when he got in touch with the hospital, as he felt his health getting worse. There was more. Things got even worse. The nurse tells Kim how Michelle even tried to change the will. She tried to get rid of both Barry and Kim. Kim is shocked. She asks the mother how she tried to get the change of the will arranged. The nurse tells Kim that Michelle kept telling lies about Kim and Barry to make herself look better. Barry found out shortly after. That's when he started to lose his sense of reality. The nurse adds with great concern. And the nurse asks Kim to come with her to see Barry. This way, she can tell Barry in person that she'll support him and everything will be all right. Kim wipes away her tears and agrees. She gets ready to leave with the nurse. But before she does, she has one more thing to deal with. What about Michelle? Kim comes up with a smart little plan. Z tells Michelle that Barry is taken in at the hospital and that she has to sign for something as the oldest sister. Michelle believes it right away. She tells Kim that she'll wait and will go for a coffee somewhere in the meantime. Once they arrive at the hospital and park their car, Kim notices a familiar red car. The car looked exactly like the car of Michelle's boyfriend, especially because it was such an unusual car. The nurse and Kim walk into the hospital without checking in to make up for the wasted time in traffic. They soon reach Barry's room. The room is entirely empty. The nurse now loses her calm as well. She dials the reception right away to ask whether Barry was moved to another room. She has a bad feeling, and so does Kim. The receptionist answers right away and has some bad news for the two worried women. The receptionist tells the nurse that Barry went home after his brother insisted. His brother? The nurse asks Kim whether she has another brother. Kim looks shocked and yells no. Kim doesn't hesitate and grabs her phone right away. The nurse joins her as Kim puts the phone on speaker. The phone rings and rings, but no answer yet. Finally, someone answers. It remains completely silent at first, but eventually, Kim and the nurse hear someone say their name. It's Michelle. She starts telling Kim how she's in charge now. Kim keeps asking where Barry is, and Michelle just laughs. Kim tries to get through to her, but she doesn't succeed. Michelle just answers, "Shouldn't you know where Barry is? After all, you're his big sister." Right then, Kim comes up with something. Wasn't Michelle after one thing? The inheritance? That would be her weak spot. She tells Michelle that she can have everything. She'll even sign a new document if needed, as long as she brings Barry back. Michelle immediately agrees. Naive little Michelle. She assures Kim that Barry will return to the hospital within 15 minutes. Her boyfriend would bring him, and they'll see everything is just fine with Barry. Kim agrees. The nurse and Kim hold their breath as they wait for Barry's return. Barry returns after 10 minutes. He's looking well. Kim refuses to hold her end of the deal and tells Michelle and her boyfriend to leave. The hospital security sees them out. Kim and Barry are closer than ever, and only weeks after, Barry is back to his old self.